Suzanne King, part of the board of CleanTX, and I'm here today interviewing Ryan Edwards, who is the chair of the board of directors of CleanTX and also works at SunPower Corporation. So I'm super excited to talk with him today about the solar industry. So thanks for making time.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us, what do you do for SunPower Corporation?
So SunPower Corporation, it's a solar panel company. We have our headquarters in California, and we have a domain office in Austin. And so that's where we have about 200 headcount and where our SunPower Capital Services business is located. So SunPower Capital is the financial part of SunPower Corporation, but focused on lease business.
Okay.
So there are different loan products out there, loan, cash, and lease products out there for residential customers. And so somebody to manage the lease side of it looks to SunPower Capital to manage that for SunPower Corporation.
Okay, SunPower Capital helping with leasing then for residential. So what are the different verticals that exist within the solar industry that we can share with our audience?
Yeah, so solar companies, they can specialize in either commercial, power plant, and residential. And so they all have different benefits, they all look at different financing structures, and within each of them, they all have we'll say different financials that they're looking for to meet what the investors are looking for, as well as the customers or the off-takers.
Okay.
So again, power plant, which is the same as utility, commercial, and residential, which is distributed generation.
Okay, excellent. And so within residential lease finance, how is the lease product really impacting solar adoption overall in the industry?
Yeah, so this was a really cool part about when I joined SunPower, was that I did not know that we leased products. And I've only been with the company for 2 years.
I didn't know that this whole leasing was a big aspect of solar.
Definitely.
In general.
Yeah, so it's a really good value proposition.
Okay.
So I mentioned that you can either pay cash for a system, which could cost about $40,000, or a loan, same cost.
Is this for a house or?
For a house.
Okay.
And I mean, there are community solar, other aspects out there, but we'll just focus on an individual, like a single home. And so cash, loan, and then we have the lease product, which is actually cheaper because the homeowner doesn't actually own the system.
Oh, okay.
Mostly because they don't have an interest
It's like leasing a car.
Precisely.
Okay.
So you can choose that, hey, I'm going to take out a big, loan, 5-year loan to own that BMW, or I'm going to lease out that loan, turn it in after, 3 years, because I don't really care about the ownership. I just want the maintenance part of it.
Or get the newest, latest model in 3 years.
Exactly. You can have the good stuff all the time.
Okay. Okay, excellent. And so, I've heard of several different incentives around the solar industry. Can you explain a few of the big ones?
Yeah, so the investment tax credit ITC, that's probably one of the biggest accelerators over the past decade for sure. And that's you invest, for every dollar you put into buying a system as the owner, you receive the tax credit, which is 30% of that dollar that you put in.
Okay, so you get 30% back.
Yeah, so you can file that on your federal taxes. Say, all right, I invested, $100,000 into putting a solar system on my own roof, and I get $30,000 back. Okay,
so you really spend $70,000 in the end.
Yeah, it's extended over. It can be extended over multiple tax years.
Okay.
But that's just simply put how it's utilized.
And does that apply with the leasing as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where the ownership structure is very important. So when I'm leasing a system, I'm Joe Schmo, a single home owner, and I'm looking to buy a system. Again, do I have $40,000 to pay outright cash or take out a loan that I want to have $300 a month? Not really, because my utility bill is only $150 a month.
Right. So the payback isn't there.
So that's where it's more like, all right, I really want the tax incentives or whatever else is behind it. But when I lease, I'm looking at I don't care about the ownership of the system. I just want something that's going to actually beat my utility bill. I'll have to pay a little bit of my utility bill, but we'll say 90% of the production that I receive from the solar system is covered, and that's cheaper than my $150 utility bill. So simply put, buy a system, or I lease a system. Maybe I'll have $120 monthly lease payment. with an escalator on it just to cover, we'll say, inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I'll have only another $10 in utility bill.
Wow.
So I pay $130 a month instead of $150.
And you're doing something that's
Great for the planet.
exactly. Okay, excellent. So that's helpful. Are there any other incentives that people should know about?
Yeah, so we have the investment tax credit, which is going away. It'll be 0% by the time we get to 2022,
Okay.
10% on power plant and utility.
Okay.
So that's where other incentives need to come in. And I'm a big advocate for these performance-based incentives, rebates, and state renewable energy credits,
Okay.
where we actually can receive, based on performance, a certain credit back. So let me walk through each one of those real quick. So the SREC, State Renewable Energy Credit,
Okay.
that is based on 1 megawatt hour of production from my residential home. Maybe I get four of those a year, something like that, it depends on the size of the system. I receive a credit for that. Well, what does that
Okay.
credit really do?
Mm-hmm.
So when we have companies like BP or ExxonMobil, they're challenged by, we'll say, the federal government, where, all right, well, if you're going to emit this much greenhouse gas,
Mhm.
then you need to have a certain offset from renewable energy sources. So they're incented then to buy credits from renewable energy companies, customers that have received these SRECs.
Okay, so state renewable energy credits.
Precisely.
And so the customer gets that credit.
It'll be whoever the owner of the product is. So if
Okay.
it's a lease, it'll be the investors,
Okay.
or else if it's a loan or cash product, it'll be that actual customer.
Okay. In either way, it helps whether it's making it a lower price for the person you're selling it to,
Yeah,
or
it's-
for the owner that's buying it.
Yeah, just think
Okay.
about, I'm turning energy into some cash I can put in my pocket
Mhm.
after I bought the system.
Okay.
So that was SRECs, and then
Mhm.
performance-based incentive, PBI. So that's very similar to SRECs in that it's based on the production. We actually receive cash for that
Okay.
instead of a credit.
Okay, gotcha.
And then a rebate, just like you go to Costco and buy something, they give you a $40 rebate, either instant or later on.
Mhm.
We get rebates for PV systems as well.
So lots of different options, and those will keep going on for a little bit longer, or they just
Yes.
vary over time. They
It's
just-
all really dependent on the state.
Okay.
So all of our dealers that we work with are spread amongst the United States,
Mhm.
and they're charged to understand what the the PV incentives are for that state, and we're also there to kind of check on them as well to make sure that we're maximizing those incentives. And so as the market continues to evolve, ITC going away, so hopefully, and this is when we talk about it a bit more.
ITC investment tax credit.
Yes, thank you. So as ITC goes away,
Mhm.
we have more of these renewable energy credits that become more prevalent, because
Okay.
you really think about it. I want to have a really good quality system that's
Mhm.
going to last a long time. And so, for instance, SunPower, it's kind of like the Apple product of PV, because
Okay.
the product is really well.
Photovoltaic.
Yeah, photovoltaic.
PV. Can we say photovoltaic? So when you're saying PV, you're talking about photovoltaic.
Yes, thank you for.
So okay, so you're saying SunPower is like the Apple.
Yeah, they're like the Apple product when it comes to PV or from solar panels.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
what that means is, yes, you pay a premium on it, but it's going to last a long time. And we estimate, a lot less degradation over the life of a system, which is 20 years
Okay.
at least. So it's going to last a long time, produce a lot of energy, and it's very efficient. It's slightly
Mhm.
more efficient than our competitors. And because of that, you don't have to do as much maintenance, replacing inverters, whatever the
So
normal.
the lower cost is, there is a lower cost in a way over time because it's higher quality.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Lower
so-
maintenance as well.
Yeah, and so on these, performance-based incentives,
Mhm.
if it lasts a long time,
Mhm.
produces energy very efficiently relative to competitors, and you're looking at, okay, well, I'm trying to offset what all of my utility providers are really needing for energy requirements, they'll find that, well, actually, solar is pretty cheap relative to some of these other means to produce energy.
Interesting. Okay. And so what, speaking of the tax credits and some of the ways to incentivize, what are now some of the challenges that the solar industry is facing?
Yep. So yeah, ITC definitely is prevalent. So that's going to force a lot of adaptation for companies. Potentially consolidation as well, because if their fixed costs are high enough, then they may not have a plan in place. So I will say most are adapting and planning for what's going to happen, and that's where, you know, when it comes to like a lease structure, we have to start getting a lot more creative. Start financing these SRECs or PBI or whatever we can, so that we can get more cash up front to cover these fixed costs related to whatever the market's going to throw at us.
Okay.
And some of the other challenges, you know, the tariffs that we've heard about, those do impact how we're going to, you know, a lot of production is overseas because it's just generally cheaper. We're a lot more services based, especially, you know, SunPower, for instance, is a lot more services based within the United States.
Okay.
So naturally tariffs are going to increase your costs. So that's where it's, you know, we hope that the purpose of tariffs is not just a trade war, it's that we're going to get better deals in the long run, so they're going to sell more overseas, whatever it is. And that's what we're very bullish on, how the market's going to kind of move beyond tariffs, bring in more incentives, and those together will continue to help the solar panel industry not only evolve but prosper.
And so you're optimistic,
Very.
despite these, you know, changes and some of the barriers that you see to adoption, or to accelerating the adoption. What are some of the solutions that you see to some of these barriers, like the tax credits going away or tariffs happening? What are some of the solutions for companies, for the industry, and also for potentially residential customers, for example?
Yeah, so you mentioned all the incentives. If we're not going to get the support from the federal government, which nor am I expecting, that's where we want the state and local governments to look at. All right, well, what are the types of jobs we have in this market? Okay, so they're based on, you know, solar, wind, whatever it is. Let's create more incentives for, if you have really good performance from your product, because you have a really good quality product, then let's build more of those credits. Let's really grasp that market of SREC generation and, you know, buying and selling, because it really is as simple as supply and demand.
Okay. Great. So are there any other solutions to barriers you're seeing in the solar industry?
Yeah, so that's where I believe we need to, as a nation, embrace the 21st century economy. And what I mean by that is understand that because it is very cheap to manufacture overseas, and more emphasis on services in the United States, where we train our workforce, we actually set aside, you know, funds to educate and train, such as some of the things we're doing in Texas include grants for companies to kind of partner with colleges to train veterans on how to, you know, run maintenance on a wind farm.
Excellent. So training programs for folks like veterans, grants to pay for those. Okay.
Precisely.
Excellent.
And, you know, as more, again, those are more at the local, state level, where they're understanding, well, this is what we really have, these are the most products that really succeed in our state. You know, we have so much sunshine here, or a lot of wind.
We do. We have a lot of sunshine. You can see it outside. You even see some solar panels there behind us. Yes.
And so, you know, once it's knowing your state better and the market of, you know, both job seekers and folks that are, you know, coming out of the military, for instance. You know, I'm a veteran myself, and getting trained up so that you understand, you know, really where you can benefit the, you know, the nation as a whole, your local economy, as a, you know, educated maintenance provider, as well as, you know, come into, you know, the finance side. You know, when you're networking and speaking with folks at certain events, try and learn more about, okay, well, what are some of the intricate parts of lease finance, so that as I, you know, say go through an MBA program or go through an undergraduate program, you're trying to expand on that knowledge while you're in classrooms.
And be a part of something that's actually going to be in the future as well, growing. And so, speaking of Texas, you know, how does the solar industry in Texas compare to the rest of the country?
I would say Texas is definitely at the forefront when it comes to how we're utilizing it within the grid. So CleanTX actually helped promote a white paper back in January is when we kind of launched, and it was our Double for Nothing series, but it discussed ERCOT, which is essentially our utility.
And ERCOT stands for the Electric Reliability Council of Texas.
Terrific. So ERCOT is kind of like, I mean, really it owns most of Texas in terms of managing power plants. And so it's kind of shaping the model for how we can utilize renewables. If you think about it this way, when I'm going to plan how much power is coming into a utility from a renewable source such as solar or wind, or hydro or geothermal, whatever it is, I need to also be able to kind of forecast what that's going to be, so I don't take in too much or take in too little and I can't meet demand. Because it's pretty easy for a utility provider to understand what the demand is from how many consumers are turning the lights on, so to speak. But it's kind of hard to project how much wind is going to blow on a given day.
Sure. Especially
if a forecast is only updated once a year or every other year or something like that.
Sure.
So what ERCOT did was they moved to a more nodal format where spread throughout the ERCOT landscape, they actually update their forecast for wind and what the sun's going to be that day every 15 minutes.
Oh wow.
So
from one year to once every 2 years or every 15 minutes.
Yeah, so if you can then update your forecast that frequently, then I know exactly, we'll say plus or minus, a few megawatt hours, what the production is going to be for any of those renewable sources, which in the long run, again, as we already discussed, it's going to be cheaper. So now I can push more of these cheaper per megawatt hour products and use that to save money for all of my consumers.
Great. We like that. We all want to save some money, absolutely.
And some of the other great things that some of the other states are doing that can kind of push over to some other states like Texas. California is signed on for all these new homes have to have solar panels, essentially. And so that in itself is kind of forcing demand for these products. And yes,
that's great for the solar industry.
Great for the solar industry. Yes, it does increase the price of housing, but also supplies are going to meet that eventually, and so prices should stay reasonable and come down eventually. But as you create more demand for distributed generation, so you're not so dependent upon the utilities just to create power for your local area, that would be a terrific means to keep our earth green, our skies blue, and the sun shining.
That sounds great. Sounds great to me. And so one last question for you. What vertical do you see, you mentioned some of the different verticals within the solar industry, like residential, commercial, utility. Yeah. Which one do you see growing the fastest?
I might have a little bias here, but I will say I think the residential space is really, really blowing up because when you really think about it, it's kind of easier to install, we'll say, an 8 kilowatt system, which is maybe anywhere between 20 and 40 panels, depends on the manufacturer. But that versus a large commercial or power plant space where the economics are a little bit more challenging, financing structure is a bit more complex. So I feel that residential is really going the right direction in terms of getting volume of product out there as well as getting a lot of happy customers saving money on their utility bills.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's easier to scale when you're doing a lot of smaller projects versus a couple of really massive ones.
Yes.
So it definitely helps accelerate adoption. Well, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything I might have missed or anything else you want to mention about the solar industry that we didn't get to touch on?
No, I think that's covered at least the grasp of it, but if you are interested in learning more about the solar industry, I can only speak from personal perspective, but I'm always happy to share more information on a individual or another group forum. And as the board chair for CleanTX, you can contact me at ryan@cleantex.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it. Look forward to the next interview. And of course, let us know if you have any questions and want to know more about the solar industry. You can reach out to Ryan at ryan@cleantex.org. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.